Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Department of Procurement Services virtual workshop series. My name is Ryan Gage, and I'm the Public Affairs Director at the Department of Procurement Services. And today's workshop will be presented by DPS Senior Certification Specialist Cordell McGarry, and in partnership with the Chicago Department of Aviation, which is in the middle of an unprecedented opportunity for concessionaires opportunities at O'Hare Airport. Managing Deputy Amber Ritter with the Chicago Department of Aviation will present at the end of our workshop a bit of information about the opportunity itself. But for now, we will get started with the DPS portion of the workshop itself. If you do have a question at any point during the workshop, we'll have QA session at the end of each component of the presentation. But at any point, if you have a question, you can drop it in either the QA or the chat window. So today's workshop is going to cover ACDBE certification, again, in partnership with the Chicago Department of Aviation, which is in the middle of an opportunity for concessionaires, opportunities at O'Hare, which includes additional opportunities for ACDBE certified firms. We're going to take you through the process of ACDBE certification and what that entails and the potential benefits of becoming ACDBE certified. Before I turn it over to our presenter, I just want to point out that in addition to today's workshop, we have additional resources available on our website to assist you with navigating the process of doing business with the city. We have a 4-volume set of resource guides that cover key areas of the procurement process, including contract administration, certification, incentives and programs, and compliance. And you can view and download all of those resource guides from our website at chicago.gov/DPS guides. And now I am going to turn it over to today's presenter for the workshop, Senior Certification Specialist with the Department of Procurement Services, Cordell McGarry. Cordell, the floor is yours.
Good. Thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. As Ryan indicated, my name is Cordell McGarry, and I work with the Office of Contracting Equity, which is a division of the Department of Procurement Services. So we're going to, with Ryan's assistance, we're going to provide you with an overview of the department, particularly the DBE and ACDBE programs. Ryan, could you go to the next slide, please? Great, thank you. So to begin with, our Department of Procurement Services, we're the contracting authority for the procurement of goods and services for all the operating departments of the city of Chicago. In this case, we're talking about the Department of Aviation in particular. We work together as a team with our operating departments and with our customers, our users, to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process in the procurement area by establishing, communicating, and enforcing superior business practices designed to help you and to help us as well. Next slide, please. So we're going to cover in today's workshop basically information regarding the DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, and Airport Concessions Disadvantaged Business Enterprise program requirements, the process for certification, the application, and the benefits of becoming certified with the city of Chicago, and what happens after you're certified. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, one more time. Okay, thank you. So the requirements for certification stem from the fact that the city of Chicago, we're a federal grant recipient with the U.S. Department of Transportation and its operating departments, which includes the Federal Aviation Administration. The regulations governing the DBE and ACDBE programs are found under 49 CFR Parts 26 and 23. The objectives of the program, again, are to ensure non-discrimination in the award and administration of assisted contracts from the DOT and Airport Concessions Program. Ideally, our intent is to create a level playing field upon which eligible businesses can compete fairly for those contract opportunities. The ACDBE program is designed to provide guidance for the participation of firms in those federally funded contract opportunities. Next slide, please. So the factors that go into a determination of eligibility, we're going to talk about that. They cover basically ownership, social and economic disadvantage, the business size determination, net worth of the owners, the areas of control and independence of the business, the expertise of the owners, and the like. This burden of proof is on the owners themselves and the applicants. So in that sense, our goal is to help you tell your story and help us understanding what it is you do and how you do it. So you're going to probably hear me mention tell the story several times during this presentation. Next slide, please. Under the federal regulations, we're required to, we look at the concept of ownership and control of the business. Eligibility is for businesses that are at least 51% owned by one or more socially or economically disadvantaged people or persons. That individual or people must have management and operations that they control. At least one of them is involved in control of that business operations. They must have operations in the type of business that you seek to perform before you apply for DBE certification, but that's not necessarily applicable to ACDBE. And what I mean by that is that under the DBE program, you should be operating. If you're going to be a supplier, you should have operations as a supplier. For ACDBEs, that's not necessarily the case. We do invite startups to participate as well. Again, you would need to, as we go into the presentation, talk about how you do what it is you do, how you propose to do it. Remember this, that you can control that activity. For purposes of airport concessions or ACDBEs, you can be eligible, in addition to actually being a concession operating at the airport, you can also be eligible for certification if you're providing a service or good or supplies to that particular concession that's operating at the airport. So, say, for example, I'm a supplier of materials that are sold at the airport, qualify as an ACDBE. I'm involved in providing management consultation that assists that airport concession to operate and provide, again, services to the traveling public. You can also qualify as an ACDBE. So it's not just limited to just operating a concession at the airport itself. Next slide, please. So with regard to social and disadvantage, basically the regulations require that individuals fall into the following categories. You're defined as being socially disadvantaged if you're a member of a group that would be Black American, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, either subcontinent or Asia Pacific, women, and on an individual case-by-case basis, other individuals that may not fit into these categories that may be able to demonstrate that they're on an individual case-by-case basis, then victims of social and economic disadvantage in this country, they can also petition to be considered for certification as well. Next slide. In addition to being a socially disadvantaged individual, we also look at the size of the business. The program is designed to assist small businesses in being able to participate in contract opportunities. The definition of small business actually varies depending on the circumstances. For DBEs, of course, we look at an annual gross receipt that should exceed the SBA size limit for that firm's particular primary line of business, which is designated by industry. There is a maximum with regard to 3 years of 30.4 billion for certain types of contracts. But with respect to ACDBE, it's a much larger number that determines whether or not you're a small business. While our slide says 3-year average gross receipts limit, that number was actually changed to 5 years earlier this year by the federal government. And now that's a 5-year average that should not exceed 56.42 million for most firms. Consideration is being given to the cost for actually establishing some concessions, and that's why it's higher than the other program. With regard to certain types of businesses, for example, car rental, that gross receipts actually comes out to 75.23 million. Again, that's over a 5-year period. If you're a financial institution such as a bank and you have less than 1 billion in assets for operating purposes, you can be considered eligible. If we have payphone companies, I think there's still some left. If you have no more than 1,500 employees, you can also qualify. And again, if you're an automobile dealer, that number would be based upon employees, and the number of 350 would be the limit for certification as a small business. Next slide. With respect to economic disadvantage of the qualifying individuals, in addition to being, let's say, a member of a group that's presumed to be socially disadvantaged, you should have a personal net worth that should not exceed roughly 2.047 million to be eligible for ACDBE eligibility. And what we mean by that is basically your personal assets less your personal liabilities. There are adjustments that are considered in looking at the net worth standard for purposes of eligibility, such as, for example, we will exclude the value of your home, your personal residence. We'll exclude the value of your retirement, for example, your IRAs, 401ks. We'll also exclude that, as well as information regarding the value of your business that you're seeking certification. So those things would be excluded from the calculation of your personal net worth. After that's done, you should not exceed 2.047 million. Okay, next slide. So we just touched upon the social and economic disadvantage, what constitutes that from the standpoint of being an eligible individual, as well as the business size and the net worth of the owners themselves. The application process is basically somewhat simple. Like, actually, I consider it simple anyway. And it should be completed with regard to being certified as a certified DB ACDBE with the city of Chicago. The following link, https://chicago.mwdbe.com, is the link to submitting your DBE and ACDBE online applications. You can go to the link and it'll take you through a series of questions that will lead you to the application, which you'll complete online. And you will then attach copies of supporting documentation that relates to the firm and the owners that are associated with the firm, along with the online application. We no longer accept hard copy documents, so this is the way to go to get certified with the city. Along with the application process, we also will have an on-site interview conducted with the owners of the business, and I'll talk about that later on in this presentation. Next slide. Okay, in completing the application, you'll need to have the following documents in order to complete and submit along with the application. To begin, we need to have evidence of your citizenship or legal residency, which could be passport, for example, presuming that you have a driver's license or other IDs are also acceptable. We need to have evidence of the proof of contributions by the owners that was used in starting the business. And from the standpoint of contributions, everyone contributes to their business. It could be the value of the ink pen that you use to write your business plan, or it could be money that you use to open up your bank account, or it could be money that you use to certify your business with a particular state authority. So everyone has a contribution that they would need that they have to make in the business. We also will look at business documents that are kind of targeted to the specific type of firm or how you're organized. There are a number of ways a business can be organized. It can be a sole proprietorship, it can be a partnership, an LLC or limited liability company, as well as a corporation. So the relevant documents that you would need would be required to submit along with your application. So as a sole proprietor, if you're doing business under a name other than your own name, you will look for an assumed name certificate. Your partners in a partnership with another individual, hopefully there's a documented partnership agreement. And if you're operating under an assumed name certificate as well. For LLCs and corporations, you're going to have filings with the Secretary of State of Illinois, which could consist of articles of organization for limited liability companies and articles of incorporation for the corporation themselves. Next slide. Additional documents would also include information that we need to establish information related to the personal net worth, as well as the business size standards. So we look for copies of compensation of the owners, which would be normally consisting of W-2 forms or 1099 forms. And typically that should be for the current or previous 2 years for the owners. And I would say that those copies are basically should consist of the total compensation that you receive from all sources, not necessarily just the company that's applying the certification. We also require 5 years of signed federal U.S. corporate tax returns, which should include all attachments and schedules, as well as 5 years of signed individual income tax returns, again, including all attachments and schedules. I would want to stress at this particular point, please make sure that those tax returns are signed. Financial statements that you would have on the business, if you have them, we would also ask that you also include that along with the documents that you're going to submit along your application. Next slide. So there are additional information that may be required from your perspective of the application. Again, that's going to come about as you tell the story. So again, some of the things I did mention would be if you're operating as let's say an architect of a professional license, you would want to include that. If you have some certificates regarding the type of work that you do, let's say I've gone to culinary school and I have a certificate that demonstrates I'm a chef, I would include those things. Those things will be pertinent to the type of business that you're involved in. So as you tell the story about your business, think about all the things you can use to support that. Those are the things that would help to round out your application and kind of make it clear to the individual what it is you do and hopefully how you do it. If you're involved in, if you're already an established business, for example, and you're involved in contracts that are involved in the scope of work that you're involved in, having copies of those contracts would also be helpful in supporting the areas of certification that you're seeking to be certified in. In addition to all of that, though, we do require the performance of an on-site visit to the offices of the firm that's seeking DBE and ACDBE certification. And under certain circumstances, we will do that on-site virtually. But nevertheless, in either case, the on-site visit interview with the owners will be reported. That's required by federal regulations. Next slide. So I'm assuming at this point, everybody that I'm talking to has been or will be certified. So once you're certified, basically, there is no expiration of a certification. Once you're certified indefinitely. You're certified in the area of specialization that you work in. So if I'm operating as a concession and I'm a chef, or I'm involved in or a supplier to a food store that services the airport, I would need to provide information supporting that. But once you're certified indefinitely. We do require, though, under federal regulations that you affirm on an annual basis that there's been no changes to the business or to you personally that would impact your eligibility for certification. And that form is normally required. It's called a declaration of eligibility form itself, and it's actually can be found on our website as well as the Department of Department of Transportation's website. In the event that during the course of your certification there has been changes, though, involving areas of ownership, business size, your personal net worth, for example, you should report those to the city of Chicago within 30 days of occurrence. You need to have that information as soon as possible. You can also report those material changes at our website. It's https://chicago.www. Next slash. Benefits of being certified. Once you're certified, again, there's no expiration, but there's also no application fee as well. This is a free application as compared to other certification programs where there may be a minor fee. As a DBE or ACDBE, you're eligible to participate in contract opportunities with the City of Chicago, Illinois Department of Transportation, Chicago Transit Authority, Metro, and PACE. The agencies that I just mentioned, we comprise what's called the Illinois Unified Certification Program. It's required in the federal regulations. It's actually one-stop sort of certification. So once you're certified with any of these organizations, you're automatically certified with the others. In that sense. In addition to that, you also have a relationship with a number of agencies that can also provide assistance to DBE and ACDBE firms. Typically, this could be chambers of commerce, local agencies, business development centers, and the like. And they provide a variety of services to small businesses and are acquainted with our programs. So they could be able to help you too. And they're going to ask some questions that you probably got in the business. Our programs, they're along with our other local programs, demonstrate our continued involvement and commitment to the success of minority and women-owned businesses in the Chicago area. Next slide. I mentioned earlier that we provide one-stop certification, and I'll mention it again. Once you're certified as a DBE or ACDBE by the city, your certification is accepted by IDOT, Metro, PACE, and CTA. Now, one thing I will mention here at this point is, say, for example, you're certified with another agency. Let's say you're certified by IDOT as a DBE, and you're seeking to expand your certification to include ACDBE certification. There's no need to apply with the city for certification. You can apply with IDOT to actually have that additional certification included with your DBE certification. If it's the first time seeking certification and you're not certified by any of these agencies, come to the city. We'll take care of it. But again, I say that because some firms that may be DBE certified for another agency may think that they would need to apply for a certification with the city, and there's no need to do that. The other agencies can, in fact, expand your certification to include that. So if you are certified with another agency, reach out to that agency and ask them about getting your certification expanded to ACDBE. Another benefit of being certified with the city is that you can sign up for with the Department of Procurement Services, Department of Aviation, under their systems for works, and you'll receive information on a weekly basis for all contracting opportunities in the city of Chicago. So it's one way to kind of stay on top of things. With DPS as well, we also include with that access to a buying guide, which is a forecast of again opportunities that may be coming down the pipe, which has not been formally issued yet. They'll give you a sense of what is coming to help you get ready for that opportunity before it actually is announced. We also provide a list of agencies, I mentioned that earlier, that provide assistance to DBE firms. And that information can be found on the Department of Procurement Services website. So I encourage you to go to the website. You have a need for additional assistance as well. Next one. Okay. At this particular point, I'm going to pause for questions, but let me just try to summarize everything. I know we went over a lot of information rather quickly. We provide certification for small businesses that are seeking, in this case, to become eligible to participate in airport concession opportunities as an ACDBE. Basic requirements for certification is that the eligible owners must at least own at least 51% of the business itself. Businesses are certified in areas of specialization, so it's important that the owners themselves have background experience in that particular area that they're seeking to be certified in. So for the most part, that's the most important part. You should also qualify for small business. Your business size should not exceed roughly 56.42 million, averaged over a 5-year period. Personal net worth for qualified owners should not exceed 2.047 million. After adjustments to exclude things like your personal residence, your retirement accounts, and your equity investment in your business. So those are the basic elements there. Again, I will stress this again, it's important that you tell the story about your certification. It does help us. Average processing times for certification can range roughly around 90 days. But again, the applications, depending on the condition that they are in, they can move faster. It's all important that, again, you tell the story about your business, what it is, it does, what you do in the business, your role, and how it goes about conducting this business. Those are essential elements that we need for certification. So if I'm looking at, for example, operating as a concession at an airport, I want to be able to talk about the type of concession that I intend to run. Basically how I do it. If I'm involved or looking at working with a joint venture, for example, you want to provide information regarding that joint venture, you should talk about the scope of work that you do. Resumes of the owners are important, particularly if you're a startup. This is your first time getting into business. The burden of proof is going to be on you to demonstrate that, one, I'm a member of a group that's socially and economically disadvantaged, and I have the abilities to actually run the business in the areas that I seek to encounter. Certifications do not expire. They are indefinite. However, on an annual basis, you are required to affirm that there's been no changes in circumstances that would lead to you no longer being eligible for certification. I think that pretty much covers everything. Other than the fact that I thank you for taking the time out to listen with me, and any questions, I'll entertain them at this time.
Sure. Thanks, Cordell. Before we get into the QA feature, you can use either the QA or the chat function. If those aren't working for you, you can always raise your hand, and I will try and get to your question. We got a few queued up already, Cordell. And just to let everybody know, just while the topic is top of mind here, we'll let everyone get their questions in for Cordell, and then we'll turn it over to the Chicago Department of Aviation team that will also take questions at the end of their presentation. But if for some reason you didn't get the information that you were seeking today through the QA or the chat function, everyone that's on this workshop today will get an email from me after the presentation. It will include a PDF copy of the presentation and a couple links to some of the resources that Cordell and Amber are discussing today. And then certainly, whether it's today, the topics that we covered today, or in general, if you have questions as you go about completing your application, you can always reach out to me and I'll connect you with Cordell or one of our other subject matter experts. But heading right in, we got two questions here off the bat, Cordell. The first question is, does a new firm qualify for ACDBE certification?
Yes, a new business can qualify for certification as an ACDBE. And with that being said, it's important for you to establish basically information regarding the business. It's going to be the owners of the business, what the business proposes to do, how it plans on providing that service or product, the background of the owners of the business, and being able to manage and control the product or the process that you plan on being certified in. You don't necessarily have to do the work yourself, but you should have the background and technical expertise in the area such that you can manage the people like you are that are doing the work for you. So that's a critical part of it. For businesses that don't have a track record, that's going to probably be more responsibility of the owners to demonstrate that they have the technical expertise and background. So yes, you can do that.
Thank you. Second question, can a food management consulting firm apply for ACDBE certification?
I would think it's possible. Again, for that food management service company, I would expect them to tell the story about what it is they do, how they provide their service, and perhaps their target market in this particular case. So again, I'm presuming that you're going to be working with a concession that's at the airport. You're going to be providing a service that will enable them to serve the traveling public. So that's the story that they're going to have to tell, to basically convince the reader that this is what I do, this is how I do it, this is how the role I play working with a concessionaire.
Thanks, Cordell. I see no more hands up and I see no other questions in the chat or QA, so I will just do last call here for questions about ACDBE certification before we introduce Amber Ritter.
So Ryan, let me also take a moment just to inform our public that if there are any questions regarding any of our certification purposes, you can call our office. Our number is 312-744-4900. You should choose option 1, which will put you in touch with a certification representative that can answer any questions you have regarding the process. And even if you're in the process of working through the application, if you have a question, give us a call. We're here to help. If you have any questions you want to reach me directly, again, my name is Cordell McGilly, and my direct number is 312-744-7666.
Thank you, Cordell. All right, at this point in our workshop, I'm going to introduce Managing Deputy Commissioner for the Chicago Department of Aviation, Amber Ritter, who is going to provide a brief overview of the Order Up Terminal 1 and 3 concessions RFP opportunity that is currently available. So Amber, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ryan, very much. And thanks, Cordell. Just a confirmation you can hear me, correct?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
yep.
Sounds great. Thanks. And don't use WebEx that often. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And I hope you learned something very valuable from Cordell's presentation about ACDBE certification. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the opportunities that we currently have on the street for ACDBE certified firms and other firms for that matter as well, including specifically for small businesses who might not be certified as ACDBEs at our airports. And specifically what we have out on the street right now that I want to talk about is an RFP for pretty much all the concession spaces in terminals 1 and 3 of O'Hare. So this is actually one of the largest single RFPs for concession spaces that any U.S. airport has put out, all at one time. So it's really a historic opportunity. And one of the reasons it's historic is actually the specific opportunities for small businesses. So I'll get to that in a moment and explain why this is such a great time to get involved with the airport community if you're not already, or even if you are already, to grow your footprint. So with that, if you could go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Great. So again, what we're talking about here is an RFP for concessions spaces. Again, obviously that's, restaurants, retail, there's some services, and those, and the specifics of what we're looking for are spelled out in a lot of detail in our RFP. So right off the bat, let me just mention that you can find the RFP if you haven't already gotten a hold of it at our City of Chicago, at the Fly Chicago website, which is O'Hare and Midway's official website. So the address, and we can drop it in the chat as well, is flychicago.com/concessions resources, all one word, concessions resources. So the great thing about that site, which is a newly developed site that we put together in connection with this RFP, is it contains all kinds of resources about, again, reiterating a lot of what Cordell said and more information also in some context of, how to get certified as an ACDBE, small business financing. We have a lot of financing resources on there from a financing seminar that we held last February for small businesses specifically. There's a lot about, how to do business at the airport, Airport Concessions 101, which is just a real, good basic primer on what to expect if you are, selected to do business as a concessionaire. It's a different world inside the airport in a lot of ways than it is on the street. And so you just need to kind of understand what the reality is there as far as operations. And a lot of other resources. We've got links to DPS and other city websites. So I encourage everyone to take a look at the Concessions Resources website. And on that website, you will also find the RFP itself. So the RFP, I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of it, but I just want to mention that we do have some minimum qualifications in order to bid at all. And one of them, basically the main thing, is that you do have to have experience running the kind of business that you are looking to do at the airports. So you have to have at least 3 years of continuous experience within the last 5 years and running a similar concept or a business similar to what you're proposing. And some of the larger packages, which I'll get to in a minute, the bigger locations will require at least 5 years rather than at least 3 years. If you can go to the next slide. So the way this RFP is organized is it's offered in groups. So as I mentioned a minute ago, this is really a historically large RFP because it is pretty much all of the concession space in terminals 1 and 3. And just for your info, the reason we didn't include Terminal 2 of O'Hare is because that terminal is slated to be demolished in due time in order to replace it with our exciting new project, which is the O'Hare Global Terminal, which will replace that space. So as a result of the fact that that will be coming down, within the next decade, we did not include those spaces in this RFP. There's just not enough time to have an RFP for those existing spaces. So this is terminals 1 and 3. And altogether, it's about 112 locations, 112 stores and restaurants, which make up about 146,000 square feet. So it's really big. So because there's so many opportunities and so much space involved with this, we broke it into packages. So each package includes a handful of locations. Some packages are very big. They could be up to 12 or 15 locations, including like a food hall that, we'd want the concessionaire to come in and redevelop. Those are the big packages. And those we put into what we call Group A. So those are characterized as Group A. Then we have Group B packages with, 5, 6, 7 locations, grouped together. And so those are sort of medium-sized ones that we expect that, the big companies could bid on, but the small companies, would also potentially be able to bid on those as the main tenant. And then something of a lot of excitement to CVA and to Mayor Johnson and everybody at the city is we have this other category called the Group C packages. So Group C packages are very small packages. They have 2, 3, 4 or so stores joined together, into one package, meaning that, the tenant would have to operate all those stores or sublease them out to somebody else. But this whole group of packages, the Group C packages, has been set aside solely for small businesses. So in order to even bid on any of these Group C packages, you need to either meet the qualifications of a small business under the Federal Small Business Administration, and that's all kind of spelled out in the RFP if you take a look at it, or if you are certified as an ACDBE, that counts as being a small business. So you don't have to be certified as an ACDBE. You might not. You might be a small business that doesn't meet the qualifications of an ACDBE because you're not diverse or woman-owned, and that's fine. You can certainly bid, and you're encouraged to bid on these Group C packages. But if you are an ACDBE, you're automatically qualified to bid because we know you're a small business. You're already certified, so that's a nice advantage there too. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is just kind of breaks down some of the information in the RFP about these packages. So these are the food and beverage location packages. You can see that there's 13 total food and beverage packages. And on that second column, it says whether they're, Group A, B, or C. And so you can see the A ones, include food halls. So you can imagine these are, packages where a company was going to have to come in with a good amount of capital right off the top in order to, what we say, blow up these areas and redevelop them. So generally speaking, with those Group A packages, because of that capital heavy investment up top with a lot of space, bigger companies tend to bid on these big, international concessions companies because they have, the resources to get that kind of capital. But that's why we broke things into B and C packages so that other folks would have a chance to potentially win some of these opportunities. And so that's this slide. Let me just get to the next slide, and I'll tell you the other thing here. So the next slide just shows the retail packages. There's 7 retail packages, and there's 1 specific duty-free package. And again, they're all broken into A, B, and C size-wise. So if you go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the ACDBE participation and how that fits in with this procurement. So as Cordell mentioned and went through in a lot of detail, there's so many advantages to getting certified as an ACDBE if you are a qualified company to do that. And one of them is that in this RFP, we have a goal of every package needs to have at least a 32% ACDBE participation rate. So what that means is, just as a very general example, I mentioned a moment ago, these Group A packages, the biggest packages, that would include maybe, redeveloping a food hall. Again, because of the capital heavy investment up front, we expect that a lot of the bidders on these packages are going to be larger, sort of international concessions or mall companies. But each one of those is going to have to partner with a smaller business, one or more smaller business, in order to make their 32% ACDBE participation rate at minimum. So ACDBEs are going to have to be in part of the joint venture or in other qualified ways that they participate, which Cordell touched on a bit, involved with it. So this, in other words, none of these, offerings are solely going to be, sort of taken up by a big international business. Instead, there's so many opportunities for small businesses here. Each package needs to have at least 32% participation. And then if you go to the next slide, in addition to that 32% goal, as I mentioned a minute ago, we also have these other Group C packages, which comprise about 10% of all of the space that are just for small businesses. So they actually don't have an ACDBE goal because of certain FAA rules about how that works. But again, if you are an ACDBE, definitely encourage you to apply for these, to propose for these. And if you are an ACDBE certified company, you're automatically assumed to be a small business. If you're not certified, you can still bid on this for sure if you meet the qualifications of a small business under the U.S. Business Association or Administration, U.S. Small Business Administration, and that's all in the RFP. So again, this is historic opportunities for small businesses. We have 10% of the footprint set aside just for small businesses, and the other 90% has a 32% ACDBE participation goal. So there's lots and lots of opportunities here. You go to the next slide, please. The other thing I just want to point out from a small business standpoint is some of the biggest packages also contain a requirement that big operator sponsor and fund and manage an incubator program for small businesses at O'Hare. So there will be a total of 4 kiosk storefronts that these bigger operators, the winners of the big packages, I should say, are going to have to fund to build out at their cost. Then they need to develop a program for finding small businesses within the concessions community or folks that might want to get involved with the concessions community, mentoring them throughout the process of getting figuring out whether they want to do this in business in the airport, and then of course mentoring them while they're in business. And so the idea would be that these small incubator spaces would rotate about once a year or thereabouts, and have to pay a small amount of rent to the airport for their space, but certainly not as much as a main tenant would pay, in order just to get some new small businesses comfortable and excited about the airport environment. So this is, again, in addition to all those other small business opportunities that I mentioned. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about the timing and the schedule. We did release this RFP on September 5th. So about 6 weeks have already passed that it's been pending, but is definitely still time to get involved. We had a proposal meeting, which was not mandatory, on September 30th. We did videotape that, record that, and the deck. So the video and the deck are on that concessions resources website that I mentioned that we'll be sending out to everybody after this seminar ends. So you can see it there if you didn't get a chance to attend. We've got it captioned and everything, so ready to go. That already occurred, like I said, on September 30th. The next deadline that we also had some tours, but those dates are also passed. We have, if anyone has any questions about the RFP itself, the way that works is I can't answer them either here or by email down the road. You instead have to submit all questions about the RFP in writing to a particular email address, which is orderupquestions@cityofchicago.org. It's all spelled out in the RFP. And then the deadline for submitting those written questions is November 8th. And then thereafter, CDA will, respond to those questions and amend the RFP if necessary, if there's something that's not clear, et cetera. So that question deadline is November 8th. We also have another upcoming networking event. We had a networking event alongside our pre-proposal meeting on September 30th. That went really well. We had like 450 people there, plus a lot of people online. And so now we're going to have another networking event. We're looking to schedule it. It will be in November, most likely. So if you are interested in mixing and mingling and finding people that might be interested in partnering with you on a business level, in order to, put a proposal together, that would be a place to meet a lot of people who are also eager to talk to you. So we'll have that date soon enough, and we'll be sending out an email blast to everybody on our Bid Alerts website, or Bid Alerts sign up. So again, if you go through this concessions resources website that I mentioned, and we'll send you the link, you can also sign up on that site for bid alerts for any kind of updates we would have about this procurement or anything else for that matter, other procurements. And then the response date, the date that responses are due is January 15th. That does say 2024, but of course, that's a typo. It should say 2025. So next January 15th. So we will receive all of our proposals at that time, and then they must be made in person. That all is spelled out in the RFP. You can take a look. And we will then evaluate and look forward to getting our new concessions online between the years of 2026 and 2028 is what we're thinking. These spaces will be open after we go through the whole, evaluation period. Then it has to go to City Council for approval, and that takes time. And then we'll move into design and construction. So they'd be coming in phases between 2026 and 2028. So I believe that is my last slide.
It sure is. Before we move on to the questions, if I could just add something here while we're talking about due dates. You may notice that Cordell earlier had mentioned that average completion time for a certification application for the city to approve, assuming a full, completed, and accurate certification application is 90 days. Yet here we are just under 90 days before this response due date is upon us. For the purposes of this particular opportunity, the city is working on a mechanism to expedite ACDBE applications. So even though we're already within the 90-day time frame, if you are interested in gaining ACDBE certification for the purposes of responding to this opportunity, I would strongly recommend that you get started as soon as possible on your application. Do your due diligence in making sure that you have all the required information, documentation, and signatures, taking advantage of reaching directly out to us at DPS to assist you with any technical questions you have about the application. But I will say, that is not a guarantee that if you get ACDBE certification in time to respond to this RFP that you automatically will be selected. That is a competitive and open process. But for the purposes of meeting the timeline, as long as you are diligent and as soon as possible, like I mentioned, get started on that application, we are working on a mechanism to expedite those. So I am going to really quickly see, understanding that Amber is kind of limited in what she can answer related to the RFP. Give folks a few questions, drop in the chat or the QA, give folks a few minutes, drop your question in the chat or the QA. I'll just sit here for 1 second, let folks, if they're interested, type any questions out.
Yeah, great, right. And while you're doing that, while people are typing, let me just mention what we've got on this screen here. As I'd mentioned, of course, a bunch of times now, the new website we created, which is flychicago.com/concessions resources, contains all kinds of resources. And through that website, you can also click through to get to the RFP itself. And it will explain to you again, if you have questions about that are very specific to the RFP. As Ryan mentioned, I can't actually answer them now. You'll have to submit them in writing. The questions for now would be if you have more general questions about concessions or the airport in general, or something else that might be not specific to the RFP. But at any rate, I encourage everyone to take a look at the website. There are all kinds of resources. I'm sure you'll learn something, even if you already think you know everything, as we all do. But there's a lot to know about opportunities and financing and that kind of fun stuff. With that, Ryan, thank you for indulging me on my promos there.
Thank you so much. Seeing no questions for Amber, I do want to thank Amber and the team at CDA for joining us today. Cordell, I am going to come back to you now. We have a follow-up question regarding ACDBE certification. The question being, as a new company, our initial capital is between 50,000 and 100,000. Is that a problem for qualification?
No, the capital wouldn't be a problem. It would be your average gross sales over a period of 5 years. So I'm assuming that if you're a new company, you probably haven't gotten 5 years of accumulated gross sales. And if you did, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. Just let us know. But no, your capital position wouldn't have any bearing on that, at least from a business standpoint. Now, as an individual, if your net worth, which is different between your assets less your liabilities, exceeds the 2.047 million threshold, then that may be accepted.
Sorry, 1 second.
Thanks, Cordell. I'm just going to give here last call for folks to drop any questions in the chat or QA window. Or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you. Okay, seeing none, hearing none, I want to thank again Amber Ritter, Chicago Department of Aviation, Cordell McGarry, Chicago Department of Procurement Services. I'd like to thank everyone who took time today to join us for the workshop. And please do be on the lookout. At some point later this afternoon, I will send you all a copy of this presentation and some links to some of the resources that we discussed today. But again, we wish you the best of luck in your efforts for this and future opportunities regarding certification and doing business with the city of Chicago. And with that, I will say have a great day, everyone, and thanks for joining us.